All right, so hello and welcome back. This is our fourth class, and we're going to talk about how to attack. So there are a few principles you want to keep in mind when you're attacking. Firstly, you need to use all of your pieces. So you have to make sure that all of the pieces are developed and placed centrally and aggressively. The next step is to open lines against the enemy king. So you do this in two ways. You either use pawn breaks or you can sacrifice, which is the more forcing way. Another important thing to keep in mind is not allow any counterplay, because when you're attacking, the last thing you want to do is to have your opponent play a strong counter blow and sort of destroy your attack. So these are three things you want to keep in mind when you're attacking. Of course, it's much more complicated than that, but these are the three basic rules that, as you're going to see, most strong players follow. For those of you who haven't filled out the poll, please let me know which player played that game. Just showed it just now, so I'm really sorry if you joined a bit later. Right, I'm going to end the poll.
When you mean play, do you mean the film copied it off a real game, or?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
It's actually taken from a real game. Yep. And both of you say Tau, but it wasn't Tau. It was Boris Spassky. Now, I think that Spassky has been a bit unfairly represented in the media. Like, he's most well known for losing to Fischer in the 1972 World Championship match. But as you'll see, he was a very strong attacker and a legend in his own right. Without further ado, let's go to the games. So the game in question was taken from the game Spassky against Bronstein, which was played in the USSR Championship of 1960. The game started out in an exciting fashion. Spassky played the King's Gambit. Knight f3, d5. Both sides develop. And now Bronstein played move h6. And I don't really like this move because firstly, it's a waste of tempo. Now, if you've attended my previous lectures, you know that in the first lecture when we talked about openings, I did mention that you shouldn't move the same piece multiple times. Well, another thing you shouldn't do is to make unnecessary pawn moves, especially in this case, to move h7, h6 doesn't really do too much. Black should have just played knight f6, preparing to take back this pawn. Game could have continued like this, and black has approximately equal chances. White's got slightly more space, but black's got two bishops. So this should be about balanced. After move h6, Spassky played knight e4, which is a very strong move. Now look at this. Spassky developed most of his pieces, castled, and then started to play actively in the center. Knight e4 takes c4, another strong move attacking the knight. Knight came to e3. Knight took and played c5, attacking a bishop. Bishop went back. And now what would you do? There are multiple ways to continue the attack, but one of them is clearly better than the others. So it's kind of split between queen e2, bishop c2, and bishop c4. Now the move bishop c4 doesn't really do anything. It attacks f7, but there's no way to put any further pressure on this pawn. The move queen e2 also doesn't really do too much. Black can just bring up his knight and put his knight on d5, which is a nice outpost, and the queen has to move again. Instead, Spassky played a really strong move, bishop c2. And the idea is to play queen d3 and set up really strong battery on this long diagonal, attacking black's king. So look at rook e8, queen d3, e2. And now the move that made this game famous, knight d6. What a move. White is threatening mate into, and is allowing black to queen with check. Black played knight f8. Black had to take the bishop, and although white would get some good compensation after something like this, and it's just completely unclear. But of course, it's not easy to find these moves when you're under attack, and it just looks really scary if you're black, trust me. So black played knight f8, which is logical, black's protecting h7. And the knight's still under attack. But now came another sacrifice, knight takes f7. E takes queen with check, and white took back. Now black played bishop f5, which is a bit of a desperate move. If black played king f7, so that have led to a very pretty mate. Knight e5, king g8, and what is the winning move? You guys just shout it out.
Rook f8.
Rook f8. Black can still take the king. And we have sacrificed quite a lot of material. So, not sure about this one.
Is it queen to c4?
That's actually quite interesting, but I think black has to move bishop e6. So the point
I mean, from the previous position, sorry.
Here? Well, if white plays queen c4 here, black can just block it.
Oh.
And that doesn't seem to work. Any other ideas? Of course, we should start with all sorts of checks.
Queen to h7.
Yes, pretty move. That's brilliant, isn't it? Knight takes h7 is force, check, and mate. That's a cool move, isn't it? So that's not playable. Instead, Bronstein played with bishop f5, but this is a bit of desperation, really. White just took the bishop. And of course, when you're attacking, you shouldn't trade the queens. So Spassky played queen f4. Bishop f6. Knight g5. Queen e7. And now a killer move, bishop b3. Preparing a deadly discovered attack with the knight. Black took the knight. And of course, this is a position we just saw in the video just now. White took back. Queen e4 check. And black resigned here. So what happens if black plays king h8? What's the winning move? Anyone? What's the fastest way to give mate as white? Of course, rook takes f8, followed by knight g6 check, knight f8 double check, and mate. Yes, this is the Kramnik mate. So if Kramnik had remembered this game, he wouldn't have gotten mated in one, of course. So a brilliant game. As you can see, the way Spassky played was extremely logical. He first brought all his pieces out, and then he played knight e4, centralizing his pieces, chased the opponent's pieces back, then he created a strong battery and mated the opponent. So any questions about this game?
Who was he playing against?
David Bronstein.
Okay.
So also a really strong player, World Championship challenger. He did draw a match with Botvinnik, so probably imagine he was a very strong player. Let's go on to the next game. Now this game was played in the Olympiad of 1960. Sorry. And this was played against Larry Evans, a grandmaster from the US. Spassky opened with d4, and we had kind of a normal King's Indian. The move c6 is quite playable against this Samish variation. Now after the moves a6 and b5, it looks more like a poke defense. Now Spassky played a very aggressive move. He castled. So his intentions are quite clear. He's going to start an attack on the king's side, and he's trying to say that my attack is faster. Now black played move b takes c4. What do you think about this move? So most of you said no, and that is correct. It's just not a good move. Why? Two reasons really. First thing is this move relinquishes space. Now in these lines, black usually wants to start an attack on the queen side, and for that, he usually wants to keep the tension and try to bring a lot of his pieces, bring his knight to the queen side, bring his queen out. And releasing the tension doesn't really help with that measure. Second thing is this move allows white to develop his bishop with tempo. So whenever your move helps your opponent to develop, you should question whether that's really a good move. White took the pawn, castles, and continued h4, which is the logical way, of course, because when both kings are castled on opposite sides, the one who gets to the opponent's kings first wins the game. Black played d5 and took this pawn. Now Spassky played h5, which is a really strong move, because obviously black was hoping that white would just take the pawn, after which he would go bishop g4 and h5. And white's attack has been stopped. Granted, white has some sort of a center and playable position, but he can no longer attack the black king. Instead of the move h5, it just looks critical for black. Black took on f3. We take on g6, play bishop h6. Takes rook h4. Now black played knight h6. Now, how would you continue with white? So let's cover these moves first. Let's start with the move Queen G5. Black just plays Knight F5, attacking the rook, and haven't seemed to have made much progress with a queen on G5. It's not really doing anything. For move Queen H2, Black can just play Rook H8, defending the knight. And once again, I don't think you have made much progress. Black can play Knight F5 at some point. The move Rook B3 is not too bad because I can see your idea of trying to bring the rook into the game. But there is a more efficient way to do that. And that is the move Knight F3, which is really the best move and really class move, one of the best moves in this game, in my opinion. Because White's basically 3 pawns down, but he makes sure to complete his development before attacking the king. Because you cannot launch a successful attack if you do not have all of your pieces attacking. There's just no way. So White brings his knight in, Knight F5, Rook H2, Queen D6. What should White do now? Right, so all of you wanted to play Rook DH1. Seems kind of logical, we want to check. But then Black has this move. And it's not so easy, suddenly. So maybe you don't want to allow some sort of counterplay by your opponent. Because when you have a better position, when you have a strong attack, you want to make sure that you have a strong, you have a good game. You know what? You don't want to allow any sort of counterplay. And so Spassky played a really classy move. He played Knight E5, stopping the queen from coming in. Knight B7. Now Knight E4, attacking the queen again and bringing a knight closer to the Black king. Queen C7 and Rook DH1. And now this is very strong. Black doesn't have any more counterplay, and White is coming on H7. This is completely unstoppable. Black played Rook G8. Of course, this is completely hopeless. White now has multiple wins. Like, can you find the prettiest way to finish the game? And also the most efficient one. Once again, look for forcing moves, look for checks, captures, etc. Oops, sorry. The move is Queen takes G6, which is a really nice blow because if Black takes the queen, then he just gets checkmated. Knight F8, And rook f8, checkmate. Black played knight takes e5. And now can you find mates into 2 moves? Once again, start with checks because those are the most forcing ones.
Is it knight to f6?
It's actually a very interesting move. I didn't consider it, but
Yeah,
that seems
I
very
thought
good.
as well.
Yes. Because if black takes, then it's just checkmate. So this does look very strong. Yes, I agree. The move Spassky played was slightly different, but equally effective. Rook f8 check. And if king takes, then queen g8 is mate. Or if king d7, then that's mate as well. So a very nice combination at the end, but I was more impressed by the way Spassky played it earlier. By the way, just to answer your question real quickly, if black takes on h5, there are multiple ways. This is an interesting idea as well. Something like this. But also the move g4 is very strong to attack the knight and try to play bishop h6.
Yeah.
Another idea is just take back this pawn and try to claim that the h file is open. Basically, white has lots of attacking ideas. Yeah, it's just very good. So to summarize, after black made the mistake b takes c4, white developed his pieces and played h4, sacrificing multiple pawns to open up black position. And now the first critical moment, white played knight f3 here. Very good move. Developing the knight. Remember, even when you're attacking, you want to make sure that all of your pieces are in the game. Knight f5, rook h2. And now another really good move, knight e5, preventing any counterplay white. So after that was just game over. So just look at the way Spassky played. It's just very logical. And he didn't give his opponent any chances. And this is the best way to play chess, in my opinion. Right, let's go to our last game. This is actually a game played by Spassky against Petrosian in the World Championship match. 3 years before his match against Fischer, this was the match in which he actually won the World Championship title. And this was one of the most critical games. This was the 19th game. And at this point, Spassky was a point ahead of Petrosian, but Petrosian, as the reigning world champion, had draw odds. So Spassky was leading by the slimmest of margins. So obviously in this position, you can see that white's pieces are very well placed. Everything's developed. And black hasn't really started his attack. Also, I'd like to draw your attention to this pawn on h6, which is not very solid because white can play the move g2, g4, which is what he played. And white's idea is he wants to play g5. And after black takes, white would have opened a foul against the black's king, against the black king. So black had to take, queen g2, knight f6, rook g1. And white sacrificed the pawn But he's opened up this G file against the black kings, which is very dangerous. Black click bishop d7, and now f5, opening up more lines for our pieces. Black played king h8, rook df1. Now black played queen d8, and I think this was a mistake because after that white plays f takes e6 and e5, another really strong move, opening up more lines and more importantly freeing this square. Freeing this square for the white knight. After d takes e5, now came another fantastic blow, knight e4. So the point is, if you take on d4, now I can take your knight. You can't take back because of mate in 1. And otherwise, the move queen g6 is devastating. So black played, and also if knight takes e4, what's the mate into?
Oh, rook captures and then yeah.
Yes, exactly. So black played knight h5, but that didn't really help. White played queen g6, bring his queen into the action. And after e takes d4, knight g5. The final brilliant move. Now white has multiple threats like knight f7, mate in 1 as well. And if black takes the knight, then queen takes h5, king g8, check, and rook f3. And on the next move, white's going to give checkmate. And there's no way to stop it. So any questions about this one?
Do you have a recording of the previous lesson, Ivan?
Yeah, yes, I'll try to post that very soon. I think you'll see that by tomorrow. So I'll send it to Christian and he should post it.
Right, cool. Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, if not, then, well, that's it. Thank you for coming to this session. And before you go, I'd appreciate it if you could fill up this feedback form.